without mentorship, without help, like I would not be where I am. There's no way, like no man is self-made. Like you need help, you need mentorship, especially if you want to save time making mistakes, because the only asset that we can't get back is time.
This is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgenson.
Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. I'm your host, Tyler Jorgenson, and every once in a while, we get to interview somebody here on the show that I've known for longer than the show has existed. So today, one of my high school choir class alumni, fellow musicians, who, when I say fellow musician, I'm being wildly generous to myself, is Hannah Kim. Hannah is a professional musician and also a phenomenal speaker who has not only spoken on TEDx stages, but also now coaches and helps people with their speaking and visibility in business and their presence online. So excited to have Hannah out on the show. Welcome out to BizNinja Radio.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I didn't realize it till I was saying, fellow musician, how silly that is from my perspective. But because you've created a pretty amazing career and just have a real gift. I still remember in high school choir, you having perfect pitch and being able to play just about anything on piano. But that's not even your main skill. You're a singer and a professional. What is it that you say? You're a professional what?
Classically trained singer or opera singer.
Mezzo soprano, or what is it?
I'm a soprano. I'm a
soprano.
Yeah.
All right. Professionally trained opera singer, which everyone knows is in wildly high demand right now. Very big. The biggest demand in all social media. But so how does one go from being a classically trained opera singer into becoming a TEDx speaker and then coaching other people on this?
Yeah, a lot of the skills that we learn as a classically trained singer is very transferable to being a speaker on stage, because you have to think about your presence, your body language, your delivery. So a lot of that skill transferred over. And when I when I was selected as a TEDx speaker, we received training, and that also helped me a lot about the art of speaking in public. And I also curated and organized a TEDx bulletin event this year. And what I've learned is that, people who are chosen as TEDx speakers are experts in their fields, and they're all experienced public speakers. But what I've learned is that just because somebody's experienced in something doesn't mean that they're good at it, because they were never trained. They never received feedback. And so they just kept doing the wrong thing over and over and over. And they just become comfortable just being in front of people. And that's where I come in to give feedback and coach them.
And what's interesting is that somebody who is comfortable is still going to outperform, someone who's uncomfortable and untrained. And so you're still beating maybe 90% of other speakers, right? So it seems like you're doing well. But if you want to get into that 1%, or even tighter percentages, then training and specialty comes in. So how did you go, what was your first pull into entrepreneurship and business from, going through choir and going through college in music? How did you get pulled into business? Because you've done some other things in internet marketing and consulting as well.
Right. Unfortunately, in music school, traditional music school, you are learning how to perfect your craft. You're not taught the business skills to survive. They just have a very traditional pathway for classically trained singers. You graduate, you get a master's degree or doctorate, and then you apply for young arts programs. And then that's when you get your agent and manager and you start auditioning for different opera houses. And I didn't want to do that. And as musicians, we're fed by society and through history of this narrative of a starving artist, right? We talk about Mozart, whose work has withstood the test of time, and yet he died in a pauper's grave. And so that's our inherited narrative. And I didn't want to accept it. And I wanted to prove to myself and to society that just because you are an artist, it doesn't mean that you have to be starving, that there is a way to be profitable, to be prosperous, and have this abundance mindset as an artist. And that's what I wanted to learn how to do, and I'm still learning how to do that. But that's where the rebel in me, like, I want to prove this wrong. I don't want to accept this.
Yeah, nothing defined you more than being a rebel. I think that was the number one thing I think of when I think of you, is wild and rebellious. But I love that. But I do, and I'm being silly, but I do remember you always being very strong-willed and very determined and if you saw a different path, you were going to pursue that. And so I love that this has continued in your life, and that you're doing this in music, and the power of a inherited narrative is so significant, right? And the starving artist, and similar things happen as like the entrepreneur who is always known for bootstrapping and overcoming failures, right? Sometimes they struggle to get into a place of thriving. Mm-hmm. And so as you were carving and paving this new path for yourself, what was one of the first major stumbling blocks or failures that you faced, and how'd you overcome it?
I think, when I was selling my online program, vocal program, it was a high ticket program, and I was trained to do, sales calls. And, as a totally inexperienced salesperson, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel this way, of feeling like this, you're the bad guy going after their money. And even though you have this value, and I just didn't know that the value that I had to offer was equivalent or exceeds the price I was charging. And so even though I had moderate success, it didn't feel right to me. And so I had to work through that. I had to work through like, okay, so these are the offers, these are the values that I'm creating and offering people, and this is the price I'm charging. I had to get really comfortable with that, and I'm still in the process of getting comfortable with it, because as operating from this place of can I charge this much was a program that I had to undo.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me. I feel like sometimes people are totally okay charging a lot, meaning getting paid from an employer. Mm-hmm. But when it's an individual, it becomes different. And it's like they minimize their own value. And I've always found that an interesting thing, where if there's like a little bit of a separation from the person, then people feel highly valued and judge and rate themselves really high. But if they're directly connected, it's almost like in road rage. People are behind a car, or inside the car, people are willing to get upset. If you get outside of the car and show up in the same grocery store, now all of a sudden the same people are nice to each other. And I feel like the closer we get, the tighter we are with humanity. And so we have to overcome some of the negative things about that, right? Of, trusting our own value or things like that. And so as you've been growing in your business and doing these different things, how important has like mentorship or training or networking been in your growth?
Tremendous. Like, without mentorship, without help, like, I would not be where I am. There's no way. Like, no man is self-made. Like, you need help, you need mentorship, especially if you want to save time making mistakes, because the only asset that we can't get back is time. And so, you're basically buying time by, finding mentors and networking and building relationships.
What pulled you into wanting to give a TEDx presentation?
It kind of landed in my lap. Like, you always have this idea kind of like in the back of your mind, it'd be nice to give a TEDx talk someday. And then, and funny enough, like, this lady that I met through a business conference, she was curating a TEDx talk. And we just became friends on Facebook after that conference. And she said, hey, I'm organizing a TEDx event. Do you want to apply? And so that just kind of gave me that door to walk through. And, I went through 3 rounds of applications, and I was finally chosen to give that.
Yeah. And what was go for it.
Yeah. So my talk was about my experience of performing classical music in prisons and how
Oh,
that
wow.
and how that changed prisoners and my perception and how that changed me as well as it changed them, because prisoners aren't usually the typical demographic of audiences that classical musicians perform for, right? And so
Right.
when I first walked in, I had no idea how they were going to be received, like how the music was going to be received. So I was like, are we going to be like performing to a dead crowd? And it was totally the opposite. Like they gave us a thunderous standing ovation every single, and we did a tour. So it wasn't just like one prison. We did a tour of different prisons, rehab centers, halfway houses, homeless centers, and every single time we got this arousing response, and that just I learned that music really speaks. Classical music really speaks to these people. They just haven't been exposed to it. They just haven't had the opportunity to really experience it.
Wow. And so you went through the application process, you did this, and then you decided, hey, that was so fun. I'm going to go through the entire thing and create my own and curate
Yeah.
TEDx Fullerton. What were some of the biggest learning curves from going from speaker to organizer?
Oh my gosh. As a speaker, like you only see what you see. But behind the scenes, there's so many variables, so many challenges and obstacles that you had to go through as an organizer, as really the executive, producer of the whole thing. You have to find funding. You have to raise a 5-figure budget. You have to work with sponsors, their demands. If there's a miscommunication, you're putting out fires behind the scenes. You got to make sure that all the speakers are mentally, emotionally prepared, because life doesn't stop. Like there were people who were going through a lot of like personal stuff while waiting in the wings to go on, and there are tears, and so you got to make sure that you're there for them. And the entire prep process, it's about 6 months. You train the speakers for about 6 months on their structure, content, and delivery, and it was a lot of work, but also very fulfilling work.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how long people prepare to step on stage for what is really a pretty short presentation. What's the average TED Talk length?
Yeah. Right now, it used to be longer, but now because of social media, like we're competing against shorts, right, and TikTok. So
Yeah.
it's averaging about 10 minutes. And a lot of people
Yeah.
think, oh, it's a 10-minute talk, I can just wing that. But it's really difficult because it's so short, because you have to put everything in, you have to make an impact, you have to make sure that your message lands all in 10 minutes. So it's really challenging.
Yeah. And so when you say you've created this thing, the top 1% communication method, right? It's about being powerful in that 10-minute or in that window. What led you to decide this is something we're going to do and create and bring to the market?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people have a message that they want to share with the world, but because they have this fear of, public speaking or stage fright, or if they're unsure of, is it clear? Is it landing with my audience? So I think a lot of people have this dormant desire to spread this message, and they just don't know how to get it out there because they're afraid. And so I want to kind of bridge that gap between where they are and where they want to be, and just kind of help them cross that bridge so that they can really speak their truth, their message more confidently, and increase visibility and credibility in their work.
Yeah. And so this isn't just about stages. This is about really how that presence appears anytime they're speaking, right? So what would you say, is there a sneak peek that you can give? Like, what's a tip that our listeners that you can share with them on being a better public speaker?
So one thing that everybody needs fixing, including myself, when I'm conversing, I'm just conversing. I'm not giving a public speech right now. So,
Right.
So when I'm speaking, I talk really fast. My pace is a little quicker. But when I'm on stage, I make sure that my pace is a lot slower. So there is a app called Ace Pace, and then you want to track your pacing and make sure that your pacing is somewhere between 140 to 160 words per minute. And that's an app you can use to track how fast. a lot of people go over a 200 and they don't realize it because
Yeah.
they're speaking as if they're like in conversation with somebody. But when you're on stage, you want people to really digest what you're saying. And so you have to slow down.
Yeah. And, yeah, it's fascinating. I'm just thinking through some of the really fast talkers that I know on stages, and they sell pretty well on stage, but I'm also like, could they have done better? Like, just because someone's really good doesn't mean they couldn't be better, right? And I think that's where it gets tricky. If somebody has already been doing public speaking, like you said, because of experience, they think they're good. But man, sometimes, that's why they say the enemy of good is the enemy of great, right? It stops us from really evaluating what we could do better. You talk about in your 3 secrets to mastering the stage, and one of them is turning rejection into unstoppable confidence. What does that mean?
So, as a singer, we audition a lot, and you get rejected more than you are offered a role or a gig. So rejection is like part of everyday life, as any creatives would know. Like if you are a writer, you turn in your writing and then you get rejected. If you're an actor, you audition, you get rejected. And after a while, it's so easy to let that define you. Like, oh, I must not be good enough. But you got to learn how to reframe that and say, well, I'm one rejection closer to a yes. So we have to reframe that exercise, that experiment, and not let that define us, because it's so easy. Because a lot of people will apply to TEDx talks and then will get rejected. They'll apply for keynotes, so they'll get rejected. With anything, you'll make a sales call and you get rejected. But are you going to let that define you, or are you going to use that and reframe that and increase your ability to come back?
Yeah, you have been performing for as long as I've known you, and so obviously much longer than that. Do you still get stage fright? Do you still get scared?
I don't know if I would say a stage fright, but it really depends on the level of my preparation. If I feel really well prepared, I like maybe a little bit nervous, just like more anticipatory, like waiting in the wings. I'm so excited to go on and perform. I did a concert last month, or can't remember, just a couple months ago, and I had a month and a half to prepare, and I sang I think 19 songs, and all of them are memorized, and so I had to prepare for that, and I felt really rushed. And even though I knew that I could deliver, I wasn't quite sure if all the words would come. And so that made me a little bit nervous because I didn't feel like 100% prepared. But like I did remember all the words, and I delivered, and I got a standing ovation. And so that kind of that generates like confidence, right? Like it's like, I can do it. And so my level of nervousness will correlate with my level of preparedness.
So let's touch base on TEDx a little bit more. Yeah. If somebody is thinking about applying, or speaking on a TEDx stage is on their bucket list, what are some pieces of advice that you have for them?
Yeah. So a lot of people mistake TEDx platform as a place to give a motivational or inspirational speech. And while TEDx talks can be that's not the primary focus of the platform. The platform is really centered around an idea that solves a problem at a community or regional or global level. So if you want to think about like, what is my idea? Think about the problem you want to solve first. And then what is that unique idea that can solve that problem? And then layer in a personal story so that it becomes more personable. Because personal stories are very important in TEDx talks. Otherwise, if you're just giving data and numbers, people are going to tune out really fast. It's when you're delivering your personal story that people stay captivated. And so your personal stories are very important, but it needs to be in the background. You know what I mean? It's a supportive element rather than the main element. So the main element is an idea that solves a community's problem. And then your story backs up that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat. I like the kind of flipping the thought process on it. So, and to connect that into what you did, like how was your sharing about your personal story of performing in prisons? Like, how did you connect that into ideas that solve real problems?
Yeah. So people say that classical music is a dying art, right? And to a certain degree, it is diminishing. And so I wanted to offer to our community, just take a chance and go listen to a classical music, or go to classical concert, or maybe, listen to it on Spotify and see if you like it. Just check it out. And because, people in prisons liked it. So, so I wanted to encourage people to kind of explore something that they've never tried and give it a chance. And you may not like all of classical music that's out there. There's good classical music, and there's not so good classical music. So find something that you like. And classical music is kind of embedded into our everyday lives, but we don't realize it, like in commercials and cartoons that we grew up in. And also I wanted to send out the message to organizers and people in charge of executive, directors of arts institution, to do more outreach programs. Like, no, there are people out there who would love this, but they just never had the opportunity to enjoy it, really, to live it. And, I remember one of the inmates that we performed for us, wrote us a letter saying, I'm going to pick up playing the guitar again after this performance, so, and, another prisoner wrote to us and said, thank you for making me cry, because I had never before been able to cry without physical pain being inflicted on me. And so, music it's not just for, a nice experience of listening to music, but it also softens their heart and really opens up that gate of communication between two humans.
I've often found that music is not just transformational, it's transportational. And it moves you to a different place, or a different time, or a different state in your own self. Yes. Classical music is an interesting thing, because even if you haven't, you're obviously very into it and it, where other people have heard it, right? And they hear it in backgrounds or elevators or things like that. But it's almost like, because it's existed for so long, that it's already imprinted in you. You've heard it without knowing it. And so it's really fantastic how it can bring you back to a place you don't even remember being. Would you say, let's do a fun experiment here. If you had to eliminate one of the greats, which one would you get rid of? One of the great composers. And why is it Tchaikovsky?
Tchaikovsky is looked down upon by a lot of elite composers, like Debussy. Debussy, he was at the forefront of pushing really the envelope between late Romantic and modern music. I don't know. I mean, I like Tchaikovsky. I don't know. That's a really hard. I don't know.
I tried to go a different direction. I feel like everyone asks you what your favorite is. That's easy. I want to know which one you'd get rid of.
I mean, I would say maybe John Cage.
Okay.
John Cage, more modern contemporary composers.
Do you like modern music? Do you listen to pop? Sometimes. Or is it classical only?
No, I actually don't listen to a lot of classical music. Interestingly, because I associate listening to classical music with work and study and anxiety and stress. Because in school, we had to do a lot of listening tests, and so, your professor could play just a random excerpt from a piece, and then you had to know the composer, what movement, what piece, and that was really, really stressful. So I remember staying up all night just listening, and so I associate listening to classical music with a lot of work and stress. And so even now I listen to classical music only when I'm studying the pieces that I'm performing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think the rest of us listen to we listen to classical to relax and disconnect, and you're like, no, that's work. I'm going to put on some heavy metal to relax. And we're talking so much about, visibility and credibility, which is a huge passion of mine. It's something I really believe that if you're trying to create a life of impact, it's really critical. It's hard to impact through invisibility, but, life is also not just about being on stages and building businesses. It's about living a life that you love. What's one item on your personal bucket list you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Ooh. So, well, there's a lot of projects on the docket right now, but, AI is the topic of the day, right? Every day. So I want to create a singing app where people can sing into, the app and then get really personalized feedback. Because right now the apps that are out there are very rudimentary. They don't really give really specific feedback that can actually improve their singing. So there's like some apps out there that, helps you with your breathing, breath control, and your pitch, but that's really about it. But I want to create an app that gives greater access to people who want to sing. And, singing lessons are very expensive. If you go to a good teacher, it'll run somewhere between, it could be between $100 and $200 per lesson. And with the creation of this app, a lot more people can have access to this knowledge. And that's one thing that's really unfortunate about classical music is it is perceived as an elite art, right? And it is expensive. It is an investment to learn how to do something like that. And so I want to kind of lower the barrier to entry so that more people will have access to the information that otherwise they would have to pay a lot of money for.
I love that. I'm looking forward to the app. I'll start getting my baritone voice out there for some classical music. What about on the more personal side, like travel or, experiences? What's something that Hannah's going to do for Hannah?
Gosh. I just thought, like maybe a couple of days ago, I was like, it'd be so nice to take maybe a week off and maybe go to like Arrowhead Lake and just like disconnect from everything, disconnect from technology and like sleep and take my dog for a walk and just like kind of like enjoy nature. That sounds nice. Yeah.
Sounds like the beginning of a Hallmark movie. You're going to run into someone's going to be there, just visit, the local guy running a Christmas tree farm or something, I love it. I think that's fantastic. Hannah, where should people go to learn more about what you guys are building in your new business?
Yeah, so we are launching a masterclass in January. So let me look at the date. So we're doing a free masterclass on January 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific time on how to, we're going to be teaching the top 1% communication method, which is, the top 1% came from our ability to produce TEDx editors' picks, who are less than 1% of all TEDx speakers. And the method that we use to help them construct their talk, help them with their structure, content, and delivery. And so you'll be getting kind of the lowdown on how to do that and to speak with confidence, how to overcome a stage fright, and how to really live in purpose. Like we all have this, we're all longing to find purpose in our life. And, sometimes it's to be on stage and getting that message out. And we want to be the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And this masterclass is that. And you can go to purposespeaking.com to learn. Very good URL. Love it. Purposespeaking.com.
So please go check that out. Learn more about Hannah at hannahkimmusic.com. You can obviously check out her TEDx presentation or what she did, but also check out Purpose Speaking if you're looking to be like the 1%. So Hannah, thank you so much for coming out on the show. And to all my Biz Ninjas, wherever you're listening, watching, or tuning in, it's your turn to go out and do something.